to the question of how to accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals through AI in partnership with the private sector. Another example presented is Fair Forward, which has developed video-assisted COVID-19 chatbot with the government of Rwanda to offer basic services to millions of people, including illiterate and digitally excluded citizens. This project started by addressing a fundamental barrier in AI development, namely the lack of training data, by collecting and making available representative training data sets in different languages. Once this gap in training data was plugged, natural resource processing-based AI systems could be developed to strengthen access to information in local languages. UNESCO remains committed to the development of a human rights-based, ethical, and sustainable AI innovation. We have seen great strides made in this area in the past few years, including the adoption this past November by the 193 member states of UNESCO of the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. I wish to congratulate IRCAI on its successful mission since its launch to provide research, advocacy, capacity building, and to disseminate information about AI. UNESCO is proud to work with IRCAI as a Category 2 center, which informs our member states in their efforts to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. We look forward to the exciting solutions that will be identified through this call this year. Thank you for your attention.
I would like to thank Mr. Jelassi for his remarks, as well as for the continuous support to the work of IRCAI and participation at the events we have been co-organizing so far. We only hope to continue and strengthen this great collaboration. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Next on the speakers list are representatives of the government of Slovenia. First, we will hear from Mr. Matjaž Krajnc, the State Secretary at Ministry of Education, Science and Sport of the Republic of Slovenia. State Secretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure for me to have the opportunity to formally introduce the International Research Center on Artificial Intelligence under the auspices of UNESCO, hosted in Ljubljana. Artificial intelligence is a technological force rarely seen in history. It has advanced rapidly in the last 5 years. On the other hand, the world is lagging behind on UN Sustainable Development Goals. However, it seems like that the use of AI could increasingly help measure these massive goals as more and more data on each challenge is becoming available to the scientific community. Slovenia is proud to have assumed a leadership position in the response to this discrepancy by connecting AI and the SDGs with the use of IRCAI. Slovenia wishes to contribute to the SDGs by making the world's largest sustainable solutions platform even more effective and impactful. Slovenia is proud to drive its collective ability to transform its economy and society to put it on a more sustainable path. Ethical questions across the globe are being taken into considerations as AI rapidly transforms various spheres of human agency. Slovenia is equally proud to have established IRCAI as a focal point among different stakeholders and as a network of experts and knowledge hotspots, not just in Europe, but across the world. We must be at the forefront of coordinating international efforts towards building a coherent AI research system that supports sustainable solutions. Via IRCAI and its new Nexus network of experts, Slovenia is proudly involved in the leadership of research and development in AI for sustainable development, as well as policy creation and decision-making bodies that are doing work in the field of sustainability, such as UNESCO, OECD, and the Council of Europe. Its networks, initial partners, are coming from Slovenia, Australia, Andorra, Brazil, Chile, Ghana, Iceland, Italy, Kenya, Mexico, Netherlands, Nigeria, Pakistan, South Africa, Spain, Sweden, Tanzania, United Kingdom, and USA. IRCAI's outreach, business, and impact efforts were seen in the 2021 edition of the list of the top 100 projects in solving problems related to the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals through the use of AI. Participant applicants come from all 5 geographic regions: Africa, Europe and Americas, Asia and the Pacific, and the Middle East. The main aim of this effort was to scope and showcase solutions from around the world and contribute to the SDGs by making the world's largest platform for sustainable solutions even more effective and impactful. Solutions are listed and applicable and can credibly solve a real development problem with an emphasis on ethics. This is where the Nexus network and partners across the world will showcase solutions in the new call in 2022, in which IRCAI assisted UNESCO, is the creation of a new exciting framework for artificial intelligence and sustainable development goals innovation framework. This event is delivering on the promises and the potential given to us by research and science in the field of AI and sustainable development in an international multi-stakeholder setting across the world. IRCAI can provide an excellent opportunity for dialogue among AI experts, sustainability experts, policymakers, researchers, journalists, executives, and the general public to develop a deeper understanding of the complex field of AI to address the UN grand challenges. Let us work together to create opportunities in these challenging times by making the most of what artificial intelligence and its science can offer. Join us in action and invite our institutions across the board to apply their solutions to the new top 100 call for proposals. We look forward to further strengthening our close cooperation with the Global South to jointly address challenges and capitalize on opportunities to promote sustainable development across the globe. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, State Secretary Krajnc, for your remarks and for your support to our event today. Our next speaker that we had planned was Mr. Žbogar, State Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Slovenia. However, unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, he could not join us. On his behalf, we have with us Ambassador Veronika Stabej, the contact point for IRCAI at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador Stabej, thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Saša. I'm very much delighted to be participating at this high-level political forum side event. Agenda 2030 is our guidebook when it comes to the path of global development until 2030. Unfortunately, as also stated in the Secretary General's progress report on sustainable development, the actions we were taking so far brought us to the point where years or even decades of development progress have been halted and reversed. The report also states that multiple and interlinked global crises we are facing is putting the very viability of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 at great risk. Therefore, an urgent rescue effort is needed for a rapid changing course grounded in a comprehensive response to this interlinked global crisis and a renewed commitment to multilateralism and international cooperation. Slovenia firmly believes in effective multilateralism. Contemporary challenges dictate the need for a strong, rules-based and inclusive multilateral system with the United Nations at its core. Dialogue, cooperation, and mutual trust can help effectively address challenges that require collective action. We also believe that eradication of poverty, sustainable development, and respect for human rights serve as building blocks for peaceful and resilient societies. Slovenia is at the forefront of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. This year, we ranked among 15th among 163 states. and we are increasingly aware of the need to deepen the cooperation and knowledge sharing within the global community. Establishment of the Slovenia-based International Research Center on Artificial Intelligence under the auspices of UNESCO was a step in this direction. IRCAI is dedicated to the support for the development of AI-based solutions to achieve the SDGs and to the promotion of responsible, human-centered and human rights-based artificial intelligence in all spheres. Today's event will be an opportunity to hear more about the work of IRCAI, the solutions they and their partners have identified so far, and their plans for the future. I'm particularly pleased that this event is a continuation of a broader collaboration IRCAI has established with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Slovenia during its almost 2 years of existence so far. As the before-mentioned Secretary General's report on the SDGs also states, higher technologies industries had a better performance and recovered faster, providing a strong example of how important technological innovation is for achieving sustainable development. The UN is starting to operationalize the Secretary General's Our Common Agenda report, especially the proposed Global Digital Roadmap, where AI is one of the key issues to be addressed. The fact is that the artificial intelligence is a technology that is transforming every walk of life. The question is not, will it develop further? The real question is, how can we influence its development so that it serves humanity and helps us address the too many challenges modern society is trying to resolve? IRCAI's mission is to connect best researchers and projects and help them build a community dedicated to solve sustainability challenges by facilitating international multi-stakeholder discussions, which have led to the establishment of thematic dialogue at many levels. The government of Slovenia fully stands behind IRCAI's mission and offers its full support to the work of the center in our common goal to get back on track with achieving the SDGs. To continue to make progress and take immediate action, cooperation is key at the international level among all stakeholders who bring their knowledge, experience, and solutions to the table. It has never been easier to collaborate at the international level to achieve concrete results, and today there are opportunities that go beyond dialogue, such as participating in the Top 100 program or joining the IRCAI network of excellence. I look forward to hearing more about the specific project at today's event and wish us all a very successful high-level political forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Stabej, for participating at our event today on behalf of State Secretary Žbogar. With this, we have concluded the opening part of today's event, and I will now hand over the moderation of the rest of the event, including the roundtables, to Ms. Jurečko, Chief Communications Officer and Partnership Lead at IRCAI. Michaela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the esteemed speakers of the first part of this event. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone hears me well. I would now like to welcome you to the second part of this event, which is a roundtable discussion on the new call for top 100 solutions for AI and SDGs and the new SDG Innovation Framework for AI innovation. As introduced, I am Michaela Jurečko, Chief Communications Officer, and will be moderating this roundtable. The topic of today's discussion is the second edition of the Top 100 call. And we want to look at the past, present, and future. So last year's call was very successful. It attracted applications from all regions of the United Nations with solutions that are applicable and solve real-life world problems. There were projects that covered all 17 SDGs and came from a variety of sectors. So building on last year's methodology, a discussion was started with UNESCO to create an improved evaluation framework for artificial intelligence. With our panelists today, we will explore the lessons learned and look at the new innovation framework for AI innovation and see how the panelists see the future potential of these initiatives. Unfortunately, the last year's initiative's representative, Dr. Vian Sharif from Nature Alpha, is unable to join us, but we count on all our other colleagues in this roundtable discussion to adequately represent the perspective of last year's applications. So our goal today is to explore ways in which AI, with particular attention to ethical aspects, can support the achievement of the SDGs through initiatives such as Top 100 and UNESCO Innovation Framework. With that, I would like to open the debate by first asking the panelists to briefly introduce themselves in the order listed on the agenda. There we go.
Should I go first?
So that
Okay.
would be John. And
okay, thanks. Thanks very much. Thank you for opening the debate so clearly. So my name is John Shortela. I'm the director of IRCAI and also professor and UNESCO chair of AI at UCL. My role in terms of research has been in machine learning and AI, and I'm also working with UNESCO and through IRCAI in terms of how AI can be applied in terms of sustainable development. We're also developing a new master's program on that topic, which I think will be a useful way to increase the number of people coming through with the education necessary to take the steps that we need in terms of applying AI for sustainable development. Thank you.
We are waiting for Pratik to join a bit later, so maybe Tommaso, you can take over.
Sure, thanks a lot. My name is Tommaso Balbo di Vinadio. I have, I would say, 3 different yet complementary hats, right? I'm a professor here in Paris at Sciences Po. I've been teaching courses on digital transformation and agility in public sector, I would say, for the last 7 years. So that's the first hat. Then I've been working for the last 18, 19 years, international development, mainly with the World Bank, increasingly with the United Nations on issues related to governance, public sector, and increasingly digital transformation, innovation, use of technology. And then the third hat is my work with startup, which is quite interesting for me and allows me, and we're going to touch a little bit upon this subject, to learn from great organizations, startups, and apply principles and approaches to public sector. Regarding this really interesting project, I've been working with John, Pratik and Devor to produce the innovation framework. Very pleased to be here today.
Hello to Katie.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Katie Evans. I am a doctor in philosophy and artificial intelligence ethics. I'm based in Paris, but I'm Canadian. I have many hats as well. So I'm lead analyst at IRCAI, but I'm also a consultant at UNESCO and the IEEE. And I had the pleasure of writing a comic book that will come out soon at UNESCO on emerging themes in the ethics of artificial intelligence. My role at IRCAI, especially within the parameters of this panel, was that I was responsible for the analysis and subsequent report of the IRCAI Global Top 100. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of my insights with all of you today.
And last but not least, Massimo.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I'm Massimo Preziuso. I'm the chair of Business Impact Council in IRCAI. I've been working with John and Davor for the last years to build this ecosystem. I'm happy to be here. I'm in my life also I'm a lecturer in finance in British University now, and I'm happy to discuss with you the next steps of this brilliant organization.
Thank you very much. And if I see correctly, we also have Pratik join us. So I would ask our technical moderator, Simon, to join him in the panel. There we go. So this is our full roundtable. Pratik, we just finished the round of introductions and we're just meeting you.
Hi, Michaela. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Sounds good. 1 second, let me put my phone on mute because I have Zoom here. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I think, so at my end, I'm a program specialist leading the work on AI and digital transformation within UNESCO's communication and information sector. It's been a pleasure working with IRCAI on understanding the previous call's findings, then reworking the framework to include some of the ethical and human rights concern, and importantly, also around gender equality. So I believe this would be a more robust framework this time around. And as I think some of the people mentioned, it's an iterative process. So it's a process where innovation is moving forward fast and AI is developing. So we're really looking forward to seeing the findings this year and work on the methodology and so on again. Thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Exactly the summary already of what we are going to be discussing. So first, let's start with last year, and I would invite John to give us an idea on the quality of the solutions proposed in last year's Top 100 cohort from the perspective of AI quality.
So, yeah, I think this is a really interesting question because to some extent, the aim is not overtly to measure AI quality. That is not what this is about. However, it's interesting to kind of think about that. So I think in terms of innovating in the application of AI, actually, there's a lot of innovation in just using off-the-shelf AI that's been developed perhaps with a different application in mind, but seeing the connection, putting it together with the challenge and seeing where that takes you and what kind of performance that can deliver on a more, let's say, particular application in terms of sustainable development. However, I think, you know, it's a chicken and egg process. It may be that when you do that, you discover there are shortfalls in the particular off-the-shelf solution, AI solution that you've taken, and perhaps from further development of that or some refinement of it may actually deliver enhanced performance. Or indeed, it may lead you to think about a completely different extension of the methodology that actually requires new AI. And I think in all of the applications, we saw different aspects of these. Some were using very much state-of-the-art AI, which was to some extent off the shelf, but developed for the particular application. And some were proposing novel AI entirely. And I think these, you know, AI is a new field. It's developing all the time. And I think there are other aspects of AI that need further development, particularly when we think about engaging with humans in what we're calling a human-centric approach, which typically has not characterized perhaps many of the solutions that have been developed in other domains. And I think that really opens the question of, you know, where we're going with AI. And I believe that this can also be, this call can also be a driver for, you know, starting new research in areas that will be most useful in terms of taking forward the application of AI in sustainable development, so that there will be both the new applications, but also new development of AI itself.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. So I believe now that we touched a bit on the impact on sustainable development, of course, which is the main goal, the main criteria of the top 100, and then we have the quality of AI. But then there's also other issues. And I'd like to call Katie to give us a little bit of what she identified that does not relate to the two mentioned domains, but there were some outcomes and issues and results.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I think to keep things brief, I'll mention just two. that I noticed that are kind of, broadly speaking, a philosophical analysis. The first is to look at to what degree projects tightly track the SDG criteria, which is to say the difference between shoehorning or accidental overlap, or how much SDG goals figured in the foundational principles of the project or venture. So how much we actually set out to satisfy SDG goals or address them in the conception of the project itself. And I say this because a lot of the applications pertain to sectors like health or industry. And these are sectors where AI kind of more easily thrives, right? We saw less from clean water and sanitation, life below water, or zero hunger. And so it's sort of this difference between a priori versus a posteriori alignment with SDG goals. Both are good from a utilitarian perspective, but maybe intentions count. The second point is what sort of a bit about technological solutionism. I think there's a foundational difference between technological solutions to the SDGs and an SDG-oriented technological solutionism, which I know is a lot of words. But my point here is that automation is not always the answer, and maybe we can take a more reasoned and holistic approach as to the need for an AI application in a given sector and whether AI is truly the best tool for this job.
Thank you very much. Probably just shining a light on a few of these topics identified, we're ready to look into the new framework. So Tommaso, would you give a brief presentation and maybe with a little bit of effort how these questions, as Katie identified, were taken into account?
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna try to be quite brief, even though I'm Italian. I'm gonna speak to the point. Sincerely, it's a really interesting assignment, and as you all know, it's one of the most discussed subject nowadays. How can technology, in this case AI, solve complex problems and address SDGs? So I was really pleased to work with the team on upgrading the framework that IRCAI and UNESCO already developed. I'm going to structure really briefly my answer into three parts: the why, the how, and the what. To answer your question, Mihaela. Why? I mean, yes, again, it's really an interesting and important subject, right? We should all be thinking about it. What the driving question, I want to repeat that, is how can we create a framework, a system to identify initiatives that can address SDGs by integrating artificial intelligence. And what we also added in this driving question is they have to integrate artificial intelligence efficiently, inclusively, and responsibly. I think those three words are quite important, and we already touch upon the ethical AI part, right? Basically, we also thought about several considerations as the basis foundation for developing this framework. One of which is again ethical AI. John discussed a little bit the last call, and there were really amazing, outstanding, I think the terminologies, initiative projects, addressing SDGs by integrating artificial intelligence. However, few, and I'm talking about the report that was produced by IRCAI, few initiatives and projects were able to really articulate what were the risks related to AI. Few were able to really discuss and unpack the ethical AI part. So this was a major remark and consideration for us to develop the innovation framework. Second consideration is private sector. The main question here, and I think it's the basis for an interesting discussion, is what is the incentive for private sector to do so, to again address SDGs by integrating artificial intelligence. And probably some of you have looked at the short version of the document. In the larger version of this document, identified some like findings from the literature review. It was interesting for me to see that the private investment in artificial intelligence in 2021 totaled around 95 billion. However, and in 2022 probably is going to be even more, but how much of this money is contributing to advancement of the SDGs? Again, what is the incentive for private sector to do good? So this is another remark and consideration that help us think and for us to develop the innovation framework. Then we thought a little bit about having solid criteria. Again, there was an innovation framework, but like the intention was to kind of upgrade, improve. There was a little room for improvement, the evaluation criteria, and I would say the criteria and the evaluation metrics, so two complementary things. And then also think, and I think this is going to be probably an interesting discussion, how to use this framework and thinking more about the role of IRCAI, right, using this framework and in terms of like supporting, coaching perhaps those initiatives. So this is the why. How, I'm not gonna get into like the methodology, the literature review, so on and so forth. What I wanted to like highlight is that we we looked at the literature on the connection between SDGs, artificial intelligence, the AI developments, but interestingly, and I want to highlight this aspect, we looked also at the startup world, right? The hackathon. I think what's interesting for us, and it gets back to the point on the incentives for private sector to do good, is how do you create a sustainable business? How do you make profit while also doing good? I think it's an interesting topic for discussion. The what, and very briefly, you already looked at the document, you're going to have time to do so. Very briefly, what we came up with is 8 criteria, right? And many of these criteria were already in the framework, or were kind of implicit or hidden in the framework. And we wanted to, based on the remarks that I already said, and other like consideration, we wanted to like really lay them out quite clearly. Those criteria, and I'm not going to get into detail, but probably we're going to touch upon some of them, are the vision. And this is what, Katie was talking about. What is the vision behind the initiative? Even before thinking about the technology, what is the alignment? This is the terminology that she used, by which a company, an initiative want to, address a specific SDG. The appropriate use of AI with different criteria and evaluation metrics, the system to monitor, right, the impact, the transferability / scalability of the initiative, the section on the human rights and ethical AI that is quite important, and it should be laid out clearly for reviewers to facilitate exactly the review of the initiatives, but also for the initiatives themselves to understand, and this we can discuss this, how to get to an outstanding position. How can a company, can integrate artificial intelligence and do so responsibly and ethically. And then we also, like what I already mentioned, we wanted to highlight the business profitability part. So we added a section on this. And also the implementation team that is related to this point, because it allows a company to develop a sustainable business. And we also wanted to highlight the last criterion, the one on diversity and inclusion, that is really key and really important. So I'm gonna stop here without spending too much time on the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommaso, for highlighting the complexity of this process. And I think we would need a lot more time to really go into all those components, all those criteria, because it's just looking at the ethics part of it, the sustainability of business solutions, the scalability. It's really big. We have a large thing to think about. But I think I'm going to go to the core idea that you seem to focus on, which is the vision of the projects applying and so on. So now I would like to ask Pratik, what would be the vision behind UNESCO's involvement in this, the wish, the idea, and also practically speaking, how will this be communicated globally to member states? Or thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. So we are in 2022, which is the decade, 2 years into the decade of action for the SDGs, and we are woefully lagging behind in achieving what we had hoped in 2015 to achieve by 2030. And so that's one big problem that we face globally. And the idea of this framework was, how can we crowd in new initiatives, ideas, solutions that can leverage technologies like AI, but not only AI, to help address the sustainable development goals. So that's the overall idea. But when you dive into AI and innovation and SDGs and solutions like that, what we tend to see is there are issues related to human rights. So there is bias, discrimination, there are challenges for freedom of expression, there is lack of diversity, and there's huge bunch of literature on that, whether it's talking about facial recognition systems to talking about recommender algorithms. These kind of issues are popping up dime a dozen everywhere. The second issue is around data and the biases that come from programmers themselves. So this is something that we also wanted to address, which is, do you have enough checks on the kind of AI systems that you're using? Have you addressed the robustness? It's not just using AI as a buzzword. Well, anything today can qualify as an AI system. You have to really think deeper whether it is an appropriate AI system, what kind of data it has built upon, whether it is robust enough, and so on. So I think that is something which the framework also tries to do. In terms of the biases entering from the programmer side, it focuses on diversity as well, and sensitization of the teams towards ethical and human rights issues. And finally, an element that we often miss is contextualization. We talk about AI solutions developed in a particular context, geographical location, or for a particular problem. And then the next day we are starting to use the same solution, same set of algorithms, same set of data in a completely different context. And that is problematic, because you've seen AI systems being used, for instance, in the public sector, which has denied benefits to thousands of people, which has, put people into poverty. And these solutions, to develop these solutions, we need to be responsible. So all these things through the different categories, the framework tries to put on the table. And this is our agenda. We want to highlight these issues. And for UNESCO, what would be the most exciting would be if this framework is used not only for the IRCAI Top 100 call, but for thousands of other hackathons going on around the world. Because for us, the idea is to influence the discussion on the development of technology in a way that is responsible and human rights aligned. So that's the objective. In terms of communicating, well, we are at the high-level political forum today. What better forum to communicate it? But we are also working with our member states, with, of course, Slovenia and others to ensure that this framework can be taken up by organizations conducting hackathons, so that they use some of these criteria. And this is an iterative process. This framework is here today. We had internal discussions whether we can really apply it, because it can be quite unwieldy to find some of the solutions. So we already cut down some of the elements. But once we go through this call, we'll find out what works, what doesn't work, with feedback from the people who are participating this year, and then we'll come up. So it's an iterative process. And hopefully the community who've joined us today will also help nourish it. We are in this, all of us together, as for the SDGs, to not leave anyone behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a great call to action to everyone listening. I hope they heard, and if not, we're going to share the video later. I'd like to touch a little bit on the aspect that is, of course, also very important. We touched a little bit with Tommaso, which is the business side of this, because we are having businesses apply and startups apply. It's not just research ideas. So, Massimo, I would like to hear your opinion on how do you think that such an international tool can affect the development, essentially, in this landscape? And a bit more specific question, what policies do you think would be most urgently needed for the development of such cutting-edge technologies to be applied to sustainable development goals? Is there a policy input that could benefit this?
First of all, I would like to say that with this first iteration of Top 100, IRCAI has built a proof of concept, if you want. So, like in the second edition of this Top 100, we can propose a stronger methodology, stronger framework, and we also start to benefit from network effects, if you want, because we are starting to build strong partnership with multinationals, with investors around the center. The council that I coordinate is also building upon strong professionals that are also making strong careers in the business, in the investment scene. So we are starting to enjoy this kind of multiple effects that come from these different sides of the coin. Regarding this news about network and important involvement of UNESCO, we go to the initial part of the story when we met with John and Davor. The UNESCO involvement is for me very important for the idea that just Pratek said on the importance to context-based solutions in technology and artificial intelligence. So if I had to tell you what is the most important avenue that I would run, would be to look at how to move towards context-based solutions through looking at this direction. That is the next direction that where also we are going in globalization, in geopolitics, etc. So it's what I think it's very important to think about in the future. For the business effects, we go towards, hopefully, through also the involvement of Amazon Web Services. We just closed an important partnership with them after a long discussion, towards also bringing in investors and also trying to build an accelerator program on responsible AI and responsible technology. Thanks.
Thank you, Massimo. Excuse me. Unfortunately, we're running a little bit behind schedule, or maybe we can say that we overplanned this interesting debate. But I would just like to maybe point out a little bit of a provocative question, and maybe this one would relate to Katie and Tommaso, and of course anyone else who can join. It's often heard that the high standards that we envision in the accountability related to AI, the ethical aspects, of course, that if this these high standards might inhibit progress or innovation. And I'm certain, yes, I'm certain that Katie or Tommaso have this idea. If we imagine a startup world, and we expect everyone to develop their businesses according to such frameworks as this one. Whoever wants to come first. Katie.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, this dichotomy between progress and respect of any kind of rights, any kind of ethical standards is a long sung song in the AI ecosystem, as it is in just about any other ecosystem, to be honest. So there's nothing special about bringing it up in the context of AI and SDG-oriented solutions. But I mean, progress for progress's sake, I mean, what does that really mean, right? I mean, we can have a big philosophical discussion about, exactly what progress means when it is not accompanied by respect of human rights and different ethical standards, different principles. But I think what a good project is and what progress really is right now in the AI ecosystem is the implementation of an idea that comes with a vision that aligns with, you know, a human-centric approach to AI, and that coincides with a knowledgeable, positive, and willing compliance with emerging ethical standards in its operational domains. What I mean by that is that the fact that a project or venture addresses an SDG does not necessarily guarantee its ethical goodness or neutrality. And many times ethical criteria such as privacy or transparency or human autonomy will be at odds with the technical goals of projects, especially if the financial means of production are humble. But we have to identify these value trade-offs, and they should be consciously identified within the larger goal of the project and accounted for. Because a good SDG-oriented AI application should seek to internalize the ethical cost of its own production and implementation. Otherwise, we are indeed working at cross purposes, even when it comes to talking about technical progress.
Thank you. This definitely needed to be said. Tommaso, maybe you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I really agree with Katie, but perhaps complementing on what she said, IRCAI and UNESCO, by integrating those elements of transparency and accountability, they're not posing like obstacles for startup or companies to do so. They're actually facilitating, because you have to do this. If you're a startup or a company, you want to like integrate, technology, in this case, AI. Increasingly, you have to comply with standards like the GDPR, the right to explanation. You have to do that. The question is not whether you have to do that or not, it's how to do that, right? And whether the IRCAI UNESCO can provide guidance, coaching. This is complementary issues for discussion. And I'm gonna give you an example. I was talking to a government official in Madagascar the other day, and wherever I go, no matter where I go, and I work quite a lot in Africa, they always bring up the issues of AI. They want to develop AI applications, so on and so forth. However, increasingly, I hear something that is concerning me a little bit, and is that they don't trust AI. The government official in Madagascar, he told me exactly this, that he didn't trust AI. And I asked why. And what he said was that we have AI, we want to develop AI applications. However, we really don't understand if AI get to a solution, how it got to this solution, what were the criteria. And we want to do this, we need to integrate AI to solve complex problems, so on and so forth, but we need to kind of unpack the black box of AI, right? So this is part of the answer. The dilemma, and then I'm not going to get into details, is that we're talking about AI. AI is pretty a broad term. There are complex and very simple algorithms. For very simple algorithm to perform very simple tasks, you can really like explain easily to citizens, to whoever, to stakeholders how this works. But what happens when you have complex algorithm and machine learning? How do you do this? So this is another question.
Thank you. Right now, I think we are a bit over schedule. So some other very interesting topics that were planned, unfortunately, won't have any space. But I would like to invite John and Pratik, John first, if you don't mind, to give your closing remarks, perhaps on your idea, your wish on the top 100 next iterations and how the framework might affect the solutions itself. And Pratik, of course, what do you wish from the next iterations of top 100 to translate into the influence of the framework? I hope I was clear. How do you want the framework to develop? And John, how do you want the top 100 to develop with the framework?
Sure. Well, thank you. So I think it's, we've been really fortunate in attracting very high quality applicants to the first round. And we believe that this gives us the momentum to hope that we can attract really excellent projects for the second round. And when I say excellent projects, I'm really thinking exactly as I said before, it's the way in which the AI is gelled with the application, and the innovation is in the vision of how that actually can be used and how that can enhance the sustainable development impact. And also the fact that it can be scalable. We're interested in solutions that can scale and become big international businesses and have the impact that we need in order to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. So I think those are our hope. And what we want to do is to be a meeting point for novel ideas and solutions so that there's an interchange where a good solution is seen, it can be picked up by another group, perhaps applied in a different domain or a different context, and we'll start to get a rolling effect where we can see really a significant impact of this approach. And I think those are, all of the aspects that have been discussed, the ethical aspects, the human rights, and the technological and the business are all coming together and need to be considered as a whole in order to be able to deliver at the scale that we would like to through this initiative. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So at our end, I think one of the things that we've noticed, we had about 100 solutions last year, hopefully same number this year. And this really could lead IRCAI to develop an observatory. And as John mentioned, the objectives of IRCAI and UNESCO are really to facilitate exchange of ideas and also act as a laboratory of ideas. So this kind of an observatory based on the framework and the solutions that are identified is one already a concrete output where people can look up what has been done, what needs to be done to contextualize a particular solution and use it another way, and so on. So that's one. I think in terms of the evolution itself, it would be interesting to monitor some of the assumptions that we had while working on this framework, which Tommaso outlined now, on whether people are actually integrating some of these human rights concerns and are they benefiting. So perhaps in the process, at the beginning of the call, once solutions are identified and selected, and then to understand the impact, whether the criteria which really force people to think along these dimensions or not, were they before considering inclusion, diversity in their way of developing the solution or not. So I think some of those issues we would probably need to follow up with the participants and monitor the impact, not only now, but in 1 year and maybe even in 5 years of did any of these projects scale up? Do they still exist? So I think that's what we are in. We are in the business of impact, and impact happens over a period of time. So I think that would be the aspiration. And yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So I believe this is the perfect time that we see what the new call is all about. Thank you very much to the panelists. I very much hope so that this year's Top 100 call is successful, and possibly maybe we meet at one of the events or UNESCO's events and have a longer discussion on these topics with the look back. So now I'd like to introduce Davor Orlic, who is the Chief Operations Officer at IRCAI, who's going to be presenting this year's call. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'll be very quick. Let me just show you quickly. Just share the screen and show this, right? So if you go on this site, just drop you the link in the chat. This is essentially where the call for proposals or submissions is. The judging process is the same as last year. We have updated that with the new methodology. The timeline stays almost equally, the same length. End of September, we probably think we will know the final set of the 100 list probably end of December. We plan on having an event in January then to sort of like showcase. We couldn't do it this year in person, but we've done it online. However, I think if we gather people together, it might be just a bit nicer. The new thing is that we have a new partner set. We are partnering with Amazon Web Services this year, together with the old partners. If you go for the next page, you're going to have the call for the form for the proposals. Essentially, it's the same one but updated, and on the back end, we've got a new set of criteria for the reviewers. So we want more technologies, essentially, just a bit more information about the choices. We stay with excellence in scientific quality. We are not disregarding that. Scaling of the impact to SDGs are very important to us. Scaling of the AI solution, like John mentioned. We have expanded the ethics and human rights side of things with really good hints on for the applicants to sort of like shed more light on what they do on this topic. And then finally, we're opening up for business aspects. And if these applications have any scientific, again, we have a very strong field for science in this sense. Publications are also important for us. They don't need to be scientific. They can also be of a different kind. And a very short sort of like insight into what people's needs at the moment are. So the call is now open, and I invite everyone to pitch in and to share, most of all, the benefits, as you've seen, are quite wide-ranging and international in that sense. And that's all. I wish you a great summer, and I wish you a great continuation of the HLPF event, and hope to see you soon.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for listening.
Bye.
Bye.